Amber, tell me about how you're experiencing the world today.
Um, well, if I was gonna choose one word, I would say, uncertain. But th
That's lovely.
but that's not every aspect of my understanding of the world. But I think today, where I sit from the vantage point that I'm in, there's so much uncertainty. And this is something that I've spent a tremendous amount of my, I would say, recent career, and leadership journey kind of perseverating on. What does it mean to live with tremendous uncertainty, and what does it say about you as a leader to navigate uncertainty? But today, in particular, everything's feeling pretty uncertain.
Well, we, as we often are in alignment.
Mhm.
And the very topic I wanted to bring, as you know, I'm a big fan of Rich Diviney, former Navy SEAL instructor, but also leadership expert. And he earlier this year put out a book called Masters of Uncertainty.
Mm.
And he has a little phrase: challenge, stress, and uncertainty are the things that we need to build resilience to overcome. And in a space where, as we record this today in March of 2026, there's global tensions, there's conflicts, there's certainly hiking gas prices around the world. Everywhere you look, the thing that you might have been certain about yesterday isn't as certain as it is today.
Yeah.
And so, from a project point of view, when we make our plans, when we make our charters, when we make
Mhm.
our critical paths, we kind of make them, I always said this, under an assumption of the
That.
rules of the game on the day that you start it.
Mhm.
But now tankers are sitting outside of everywhere because the rules aren't the same anymore.
Mhm.
And this happens in a lot of fields. This is happening. AI is displacing things. It's not just global incidents.
Yep.
In a world where it's hard to say, when we do March 2027 or hell, March 2029, we might not be on these mics on this machine. We might be somewhere completely different. Heck, I might be thinking this to you and you might be thinking it to me. We don't know.
Right.
So in a world where there's that much uncertainty, what are some of the steps our listeners can hold on to help them get through these times?
Um, I I think what comes to mind for me, just as a human, not so much as a project manager, is I think to my own relationship with the need to know what's right and wrong, what's good and bad, what's black and white. And right from a small child, I kind of was raised in with a worldview that those things were definable. And as I became a professional, I brought a lot of that indoctrination, I would say. And I'm not suggesting there aren't things that are good and bad or right and wrong. I'm just saying my upbringing, my experience was that if you didn't know those things, you couldn't navigate the world. So we had to have certainty. And that certainty felt certain until I got to, midway through my professional career, my life experience as an adult, raising kids, having a partner, doing life, where all of a sudden the certainty, uh, I found kind of got taken out from under me. And it happened in a bunch of different ways. And I think for this conversation, I don't have to go into some of those ways. The point was my need to know for sure that something is right or wrong, that that rug got taken out from under my feet. And I think as a project professional, I recognize if I look just to the tactical tools that we use to build project plans, what we are trying to do with these tools is create certainty when there absolutely is none. So, in by definition of a project, we are creating a new product, service, or result, and it's new and it's unique. So it might even be a riff on something else that already exists, but the part we're building in the project is unique. Unique space, or the space where unique lives, is completely uncertain. Because the whole point of being unique is that we don't know what we're doing. Why? Because we haven't been here before. There are things that we've done in the past that may um, afford us more awareness of what to do, but it doesn't give us certainty because the unique thing we're producing is virtually unknown. We are creating the known out of the unknown. So, I think about something as simple as like the project charter, which the project charter it's the document that initiates the work. And we call it that initiation document because the goal of the project charter is it should have within it everything we understand to um, be true of why we're endeavoring to create this unique thing. Um, but it doesn't contain within it a clear picture of what the thing is. It's a clear picture, perhaps, of what we want it to be. So we use the term scope. So the project charter defines scope well enough so we all can agree, yeah, let's do this. We're all going to do it. Is this what we said we were going to do? Yep, that's kind of what we're thinking. But it doesn't have like it's not like we have a prototype of the thing. If it's a I don't know. Let's say we're going to make a new for some reason, I want to use the term Flugelbinder, which for any of you who remember the Tom Cruise movie called Cocktail that was made in the 90s, that was a term used in that movie to describe this little plastic thing on the end of like a piece of clothing, and they called it a Flugelbinder. Point being, if the thing we're making, this Flugelbinder, if we all agree this is what we want, then we write it all down in a charter. But we don't have the Flugelbinder necessarily. Sometimes you have a prototype, but it's a sketch version. And what's in scope is we're trying to, in the project charter itself, create the prototype or the very first unique thing. So we have the ideas. And when you have that as a project professional, you then take that information and you start to build certainty around it. So if we need to create a Flugelbinder and we know we need plastic, for instance, we might not know the exact type of plastic, but the certainty is we need plastic. So that's somewhere you can start. You can start to make certain that we know we want or need plastic, but we don't know what plastic. So there's still uncertainty within the certainty. And then, step by step as we build plans, even as you're creating a work breakdown structure and you're looking at, okay, if we want to do, the plastic procurement for whatever we're building, this Flugelbinder, we're making certain the types of parameters we're going to want to contract or procure for. But as we are doing it with the lack of certainty we have, we begin to do research, we investigate, we might even put an RFP out, which is a request for proposal to plastics companies, where we go, okay, here's our idea, here's what we're thinking. We don't give too much away because, of course, if it's proprietary, we want to protect the project. But at the same time, we want to give enough away so that we can get plastics companies to give us intelligence, literally, on the plastic, so they can then help us create more certainty around the type of plastic that we're going to need. And as we start to break that down into the tasks of a work breakdown structure, what we're doing is we're inventing certainty. We're making good and bad decisions out of, well, essentially, what doesn't exist. We are creating that existence. And I think in my journey of uncertainty, from a place of being raised with so much certainty, I think this is why I've been drawn to project management, because I see the industry itself, the profession itself, existing to invent certainty and not absolutes. Because if there's one thing I've learned from doing it for so long is the learn as you go model, the literal agile approach to project planning, that is the richest way to develop certainty, because you do a little, you test a little, you learn a little, and then you redo more. And it's the plan, do, check, act cycle, right? That quality metric. And I'm not a quality manager. That's not my specialty in project management. But I recognize that the plan, do, check, act, the PDCA cycle, so valuable because what it is specifically on quality is it is trying to create certainty by doing it in little short kind of cycles where did that work? Oh, it worked. Yay! Now we know something is good. Before that, we didn't know if it was good. So it's this cycle of testing and lessons learned. And I think in these processes that we do use in project management, that's what we're doing. We're like certainty, or I was going to say, what's the term? We like instigate and create certainty where it doesn't exist. And with that comes, the good, the bad, the right, the wrong, as it pertains to the subject matter at hand. Um, and for me, like I said, I think it's human and very appropriate to want certainty. It makes us feel better when we can kind of, when you sit down in a chair and it holds you up. There's something about that where you're like, the certainty of I am being held above the floor and I'm not falling. There's a relaxing feeling to that as a human. And I think that's what certainty gives us. Problem I have with that is because I was raised to understand we had to have certainty, it means when we lack certainty, I can feel really vulnerable. And I think even as a project professional, sometimes I will drive a project team to create certainty at the risk of it not actually being maybe the right timing,
Mm.
maybe even the right quality metrics, maybe not even to scope appropriately, but I will drive them to the certainty because it makes me feel better, not because it's better for the project. And that I see project teams do this a lot of the time. And I think that's the human error part that I think also when people say to me, well, what's going to happen with AI in project management? And I'm like, well, AI is going to just be able to do so much better a lot of this fundamental work that we've understood and done as project managers. It's not going to replace us fully, but it's going to catch the things that we suck at, like letting our bias or our vulnerability about wanting certainty before it's time to motivate us to make different decisions. It's going to, or I believe already has the ability to be more conscious of that. And yeah, and I think how do we bring these tools into our daily lives right now to handle the uncertainty? I think it is growing more comfortable with the gray, the in between, recognizing that if you don't know the right answer, that doesn't make you intrinsically wrong. It just means you don't have the knowledge yet.
So I'm going to throw a word in here that you haven't said, but this is how I'm hearing from
Okay,
what you're saying.
sure.
You talked about using agile,
Hmm.
the tool, and plan, do, act.
Hmm.
And of course, as you were saying plan, do, act, I just kept hearing the military improvise, adapt, and overcome.
Okay.
Which in both of those cases, you're looking at something and you're like, what we're doing isn't working, so let's do something else. And the word I'm going to introduce specifically is creativity.
Okay.
Because like when I think about adaptability and overcoming, I have to imagine something that doesn't exist.
Okay.
In plan, do, act, you have to imagine something that doesn't exist yet. And we're playing in this creative space. AI could do a podcast that sounds exactly like us
I
based
would
on
challenge it to.
based on what we've done in the past,
That's true. You're right.
but it can't creatively know
Where
what you and I are working
That's
on
right.
that has never made it into the space yet.
Yeah. It can't know what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
But the irony is neither can I. Like I think that's the other thing too. Like let me riff on that a bit. Like I worked really hard to know what I was going to say before I said it for a good portion of my professional career. That meant I was always building a strategy with my words before they came out. Now that sounds like a really good thing. And in theory, it is a good thing. But the challenge with that is that what happens often is when you're a novice or you don't have as much experience is you build strategy because you really are wanting to create more certainty than anybody could possibly have. And so it ends up being like theater. You literally put on a play as a leader, as a novice professional. You make it or fake it till you make it. But the problem is that the certainty itself, I think, ultimately can remain an illusion for most of that time. Because if it's not authentic, and this is where I also think the human race itself has such power, our authenticity is to even ourselves not fully be able to predict what we're going to do and say. The moment, case in point, even today, I was thinking about, we had planned for you to come. We're going to sit down. We're going to lay down some podcasts. Great. I knew I had a meeting. You knew you would be, so we were just playing with the time, right? We're playing with time. You get here, you text me. I'm still on my call. I give the warning. I got to go. But this idea that with every bit of certainty, we would start podcasting at a certain time. Well, no, it's unrealistic for us to have that. But there are a lot of places where that would not be tolerated. The lack of ability to flex that time would make people in the room feel like that was unprofessional. You and I, we don't look at it that way. You're the master of time will take care of things. And, that was the line you delivered to me. And time will take care of things actually is a phrase that plays at the uncertainty. And what it says is I am human and life will go around us and work will happen and other variables of certainty and uncertainty will happen. But time itself also will find its way. And as humans, you can't predict how I'm going to speak. You can't predict where I take this conversation. You cannot possibly know where I'm going to go with it because I don't even, if I'm authentic, if I haven't fully strategized. And I think, sometimes I teach leadership and I often have students that are like, well, what's the right way to lead? And I'm like, I can't tell you. I can talk to you about frameworks. I can talk to you about scenarios. We can put ourselves in situations and imagine how we might come out of them. But until you're there is no right or wrong. There just is how you will respond in that moment. And oftentimes afterwards, you can go, well. I led that as best I could. I led that wrong. I hear a lot of people say that. I led that wrong. And I'm like, well, wrong? It depends. If you throw that experience away and you never learn from it, then I would say you led it wrong. But if you made a misstep in leadership, but you learned from it, and because of that, it made you a better leader, then I would say you learned that right. You led it right. You learned it right. Like, that's the goal. And of course, that gives you more certainty. Every experience, failed or success driven, gives you more opportunity to be more certain. It's fascinating, really. But I think authenticity for me is the biggest piece. And you use the word creativity. And I think possibly that's also what's at play, because partly why I can't tell you how I'm going to respond to a question you ask me until I'm doing it is because there is this ability to, as a human, be creative in the moment, to take my feelings, my emotions, the situation I'm in, what I've just recently said, what you've said, the look you give me, the room we're in. There's so much context that can just shift my perspective and make me say or respond in a different way.
So I love where you came up there, because there's something that you and I both share, and we both do this a lot, and people have talked to us about it. And that is that when either of us do speaking engagements, there are some speakers out there who could tell you exactly what they're going to say at minute 13 and exactly what they're going to say at minute 18. Like, do you know? I'm not criticizing it. I'm just saying that is a style
I know.
of public speaking.
I know.
And you and I are both very extemporaneous. We know what we're going to do and we have a framework, but what comes out is context driven. It is, okay, in this room with this audience, with these questions, with this space,
There's a total lack of
here
certainty.
is what is the best I can give you.
Seriously, there's a total lack of certainty. I just realized you're right. I speak with a total lack of certainty. And the hard part about that is that people who know what they're going to say at minute 13 would argue that I am unprepared. That I don't know what I'm going to say at minute 13 means I'm not prepared well enough. To which I would argue, okay, but what are you preparing for?
So this is where the martial artist in me wants to kick in and say, if you're doing a form, like a kata,
Yeah.
then you're right. I am not prepared for your kata.
Right.
But if I'm going to do freestyle,
Uh-huh.
then I need to be more prepared than the kata, than the form, than the box that I'm putting it in.
Mhm.
And I guess this is where the creative space comes from, because what I'm hearing you say is, as challenge, stress, and uncertainty hit us,
Yes.
what are we prepared for?
Mhm.
Because if we're prepared and we've done the work, you and I don't, and I'll say this is true. If we don't know the answer to something, I've
Well,
heard both of us do it. We say, I don't know that.
I don't
I'm
know.
not an expert there. If you want to know about singing well, please talk to Amber. Do not speak to me. My grandkids are the only ones who want me to sing to them, and that's because they're little.
Mhm.
I have no specialty there.
Mhm.
Authenticity.
Mhm.
But if you want to know about the things I can help with,
Like Batman?
authentically. Oh, yeah.
What the, listeners don't know is that he's wearing a Batman T-shirt right now. So, yeah, Martin's very professionally dressed and also has his Batman T-shirt on. But yeah, like, I don't know anything about Batman, although I have to say, um, you have helped me understand that there is more to Batman than just what I see, which is a childhood kind of comic meets, and I think this is also where I'll give perfect example of certainty. I was certain that Batman was a cartoon for children. I was certain of it. I maintained that certainty pretty well until a couple years after I met you. And I maintained the certainty after I met you because even though I knew that was what you were into, that still didn't convince me. Just because I met some, adult who acts like Batman is more didn't make me go, no, Batman isn't more. It made me go, I'm so right and they're weird. Like literally, it was something that it was a barrier between us. And then, I think I'm trying to remember, but I think I invited you to run a strategic planning event for a board that I was on. And of course, I had great certainty that you would handle that well and that would be good. And I knew that the people in the room would respond well to your style. What I didn't anticipate was that you would do it using Batman. And I came away from that strategic planning day going, okay, I was certain Batman was a toy and a comic for children. And now at like 5:30 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon, I am not so certain I was right.
What you can't possibly know is that my parents just left town and I showed them that presentation
Oh,
last week because I knew that my mom would never get much like, but I'll say this, when I showed that, because it was for listeners, the entire presentation is how can we discuss leadership in a way that doesn't feel stuffy? And I
yeah.
used very specifically Lego Batman.
Oh, Lego Batman, that's
I
right.
used Lego
Okay.
Batman. And at least half of the room at some point came up to me and said, I got to go home and watch this with my kids. Because on one hand, if you just watch it to be fun and funny,
It does it.
that's exactly what it is.
Right.
But if you watch it with the didactic eye of what are the story life
Yeah.
lessons this story is trying to show me,
Mhm.
and I think that's, again, coming back to challenge, stress, and uncertainty. Are we prepared to be open
Yeah.
for what shows up?
Well, and I think this is what I learned, when I met you all those years ago, and then when I had that Batman experience, what I was aware was I was less open to learn and change my certainty then. But that also was a part. Me understanding and grasping Batman in a different way has been a part of the journey to me letting go of uncertainty. And also, I wasn't as in project management then. I was aware of the profession. I was aware of some of the criteria. I think I had my PMP at the time, but I was really early on to understanding all of the kind of tools and the real um assets that the profession of project management bring to particularly uncertainty. Fast forward to now, and I look back and realize this was a part of that journey. So for me, recognizing that I was literally wrong to believe that Batman was just a toy and just a comic, and also my openness to watch you lead that. And at the same time, it's not like it was a switch that got flipped. It was just a beginning. But since then, my openness to that has really expanded. And that's, I think, for me, it takes resilience. Resilience as an individual to be open, to be authentic, and then I think, like you've said, to bring creativity in. And as a project professional, we have a lot of tools, and these tools are just structures to create certainty when we don't have any. And so many of them will help us, and they will transfer into this time, this age, and this space of uncertainty. And I think, for someone that needs to feel certain about things when the world is uncertain around them, some of these things can be really helpful. But it still, I believe, will require, and the the life journey will still require you to be open to learn new things in order to handle the uncertainty, because that resiliency, that sort of letting go of the black and the white and being open to find out that not that you were wrong, that you just didn't have all the information. That was a thing. I realized the Batman that I thought was ridiculous was still the Lego Batman. I thought it was ridiculous, but I didn't have all the information. And then, you came along. You didn't rewrite the script. You didn't put anything into that was brand new, that made it more leadership savvy. No, you literally showed clips of the same movie I thought was ridiculous. And yet, with your perspective and with that filter, I saw it in a fresh new way. And that's the point. I think, how do we survive uncertainty? We let go of what we must understand as certain. And we see, and we are open to see things from a different angle and perspective. And I think as humans, we bring our creativity into that too, right?
I love that. So coming back to the beginning, the planet is going to be uncertain.
Yes.
Gas prices will go up and down.
Yes.
Political turmoil will go up and down.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're open,
yeah,
and if we're able,
mm-hmm.
and if we're creative to challenge what we thought was certain,
right,
we can find our way through.
Agreed. And we can do that as professionals, but we can do that as humans, and we can use the same tools. I often, people ask me, like, project management, I don't know much about that profession. And I always say, yes, you do. You're human. You are a project manager. You may not have all the tools I have, but you understand fundamentally that life is a project, and surviving and thriving and being resilient, these are all projects. And so there are transferable professional tools and skills that we can use. Yeah.
Well, I want to say thank you for today's podcast. And for our listeners, we will return same bat time, same bat channel for our next event.
Thanks, Martin.
Thank you.